Disclaimer, this video is not implying that this is the ultimate solved truth of the lore, but it's rather my strongest current belief or headcanon for the way the events of the story line up, built by both others' analyses I've read over time, as well as my own combined over that time of many months that I've been around this game. I might make more content with other theories to the answer to this subject, as this is not full answer, but for now, let's just enjoy this theory. Highfleet itself is a difficult game to unwrap. Even in its own lore does it have historians disagreeing over major facts, but most essentially and all the same is the fact of the darkness, an event that drives a lot of the core theme of the late stages of the Kievan offensive, is also not very well answered. In-game, two foundational proposals are brought to bear directly to the player, one being by Dodd, the proposal that the sun was blocked by the eclipse of some sort, and the second proposal is made by Pyotr. The ash of the nuclear war in the south has risen and created a nuclear winter of unseen proportions. However, it seems that both of these proposals are actually incorrect, or at least difficult to believe on further digging or analysis. Most notable of all the evidence you can find is the Caravan Events. There are 4 derivations of this event, and you can see multiple in one campaign sometimes, and all kind of imply scenes more out of a Christian or Western Armageddon, what with disease, disappearances, and great rains. However, the 4th, one of note, piques interest, so the others could be explained away somewhat. This one's more hard to deal with, along with the rains, but we'll get into that some other day. The text for this one is as such. The caravan leader invites you to his tent and shares his deepest concerns with you. Grand Noyan, the stars that guide us are disappearing. You hear emotion in his voice as he continues. I refused to believe it at first, but the star of the east, Al-Jaharmi, has not been in the sky for a month. The charts I bought in Meshed are useless now that Al-Jaharmi is no more. These are the end times, Grand Noyan, the end times. The Elaim shakes his head in sorrow. According to this event, an important navigational star has disappeared. It's likely that this event is supposed to precede the darkness, as both the governor's meeting and in the main darkness event, it's stated that the sky is pitch black or starless, while this Elaim is not noting any other stars missing or a black sky, just this singular star missing. In either case, this event immediately suggests that whatever happened to the primary stars of Alat, a reminder that there are multiple suns over Alat, is not merely happening to just that star. This already suggests an eclipse is very unlikely, as an eclipse is usually only on the star side of a planet, and therefore only seen during the day, while the nighttime stars are usually facing away from the sun. There are some extreme cases astronomically that may complicate that scenario, especially to what happened being complicated, but as it stands, those are outliers of extremity where the darkness as an event would inevitably fall into this theory anyways to happen. This fact also heavily damages the ash theory. Counterpoints can be made that the idea that a thin amount of ash arrived first, however this doesn't sound realistic in terms of atmospherics, and most notably does not sound in line with the scenario in question. The darkness arrives at a fixed time of exactly about 2 weeks into the campaign, while this event states that the star has been missing for a month. Even accounting for the fact that the nukes dropped 1 or at most 2 weeks before the campaign actually starts at there would be a half-week deficit to make a full Gregorian month. Maybe a lunar month would be very close, however, mind you. But that leaves basically no time for the light, quote-unquote, ash to actually that would, block only this one star, to actually travel to Alat at anything besides supersonic speeds. And in another final note, this star is the Star of the East, which implies it's a low magnitude, which for astronomy means it's a high brightness, you can see easily with your eyes, star, as most stars picked for navigation are those found bright and easily. So if it's not ash, and it's not an eclipse, what is it? Well, there is no solid answer presented in game, and I can't actually directly give you a solid conclusion. However, there is one saying, one voice, one phrase in the Elaim tongue, which is presented as the third answer in the game to the cause of the darkness. Shakhor-Al-Farakh. Shakhor-Al-Farakh, however you want to pronounce it, I do not know the pronunciation. I'm not a military student. I will not try and say that I know it. Anyways, is a phrase spoken by both Sayadi and the Elames of the crowd as a chant in the success faith path of the darkness event. Afterwards, if he was present before this event started, Alsahir, the boy, will approach Sayadi, who claims that he only said what he needed to say, Sayadi that is, without knowing the meaning of Shakhor-Al-Farakh. Alsahir then reveals the meaning of the phrase Shakhor-Al-Farakh in the following exchange. Since ancient times, my people have known the city of Khiva under a different name. We call it Kishtim, the Ark City, is the translation. This city was once ruled by a Shakhsi duke. When the Alau invaded Garat, they seized Kishtim for themselves and made her their capital. The old legend says there will come a day called Shakhor-Al-Farakh, the day of the Black Void. And on that day, all the peoples of the world must gather in Kishtim. To which the Duke answers the boy, I have heard that the Khiva nuclear reactor is unlike any other. Is that so? The boy answers, they say it is covered in a gigantic dome of over 2,000 cubits in width. And so the Duke concludes while answering, such a dome would be large enough for thousands of people to live in safety. To end that quote. It is through this text that we learn that the prophecy, perhaps the main one referred to, perhaps not completely related, is that of Shakhsi origin, or at least tied to them. It should be noted that the tooltip that shows up for the Shakhsi, or hidden people, is as follows. The Shakhsi, the hidden people, ruled over Garat before the Alau conquered the land. The last of the Shakhsi live in bunker cities. Their locations are a closely guarded secret, and the people of Garat revere Shakhsi greatly as the keepers of ancient wisdom. For reference, these are the hidden people you find in the desert who aren't connected to anything. What mainly comes to mind is two major things. One being that the note that they are keepers of ancient wisdom. The other is the confirmation that Shakhsi, the ancient knowledge keepers, are the hidden people. What's important about this is that Alsahir's group, more particularly, he is titled as the leader of the hidden people. Why this is important has a bit less to do actually with Alsahir himself, but with his likely predecessor. Most particularly, the implication that, be it the father who was killed, as the reason why he joins you, is actually the masked Alame from the event at Ur. It's never stated, as is the usual for Highfleet, and therefore is not provable. However, the implications are heavy, relatively clear, and make sense, to me at least. Both are titled Alsahir, perhaps an last name of sort, and most notably, the Alame is never seen after the beginning at Ur, and additionally, the timeline also makes sense. As Alsahir is usually far away north, that the time frame to meet him, when you meet him, matches what was said, which was that his father was killed a few days ago, and that also doesn't conflict with the Darkness event if you get him before that. Keep in mind that when both are met, they are heavily respected in terms of when both show up. Not at the same time, obviously, right? The boy is bowed to, and the masked Alame is whispered around and given space. And I believe actually it might be bowed to. I have to double check. This implies both are given respect in a similar manner, which makes sense as the game states itself. Alames respect the Shakhsi thanks to their background. With that assumption out of the way, all it really needs to do for us is establish that the masked Alame is of some kind of Shakhsi origin. With that established, keep with me, we can get into the meat and potatoes of this theory. With it established that neither the Eclipse nor Ash can be responsible for the darkness, the Shakhor-Al-Farakh is a telling with origin among the hidden people who have the highest chance of anybody in Garat of maintaining old world knowledge. It implies, perhaps, that the prophecy is a specific date known for scientific reasons, or at least reasons not so religious in pretext. The reason is hard to specify, however, it should be noted that Highfleet originally was supposed to actually be presented in the same universe as Hammerfight, and that the earlier development of the game, the story actually even took place on Helat, which is the same planet as Hammerfight, and the Romani were actually named as a different faction entirely from Hammerfight's deep past. There's also a name of Prophet Sayadi comes from Hammerfight. There's many other things, right? Of course, well, on that tangent, do not be confused. I am not saying Highfleet and Hammerfight are directly connected canonically or in lore or anything. That is, if I remember correctly, I think it's actually confirmed by the developer, unfortunately, if you ask me, that they are not connected. They were separated during the development in terms of lore. He decided they didn't work out. However, it's still worth noting that Highfleet was originally tied to Hammerfight, and the developer's tendencies towards that kind of story exist, which means it's not like, unpossible territory. This is important because in Hammerfight, pocket dimensions are a major plot point, as well as, actually, funnily enough, spirituality related forces, if you tie it really deep into the lore of other games and whatnot. The details aren't important entirely here, nor am I any messiah of Hammerfight lore. I've never actually even played the game, surprisingly. But once pocket dimensions, ancient technology capable of cracking moons, that's established in Highfleet's lore, and so on, are on the table for what the ancient civilization was possible, there's a handful of theories you can go hog wild with that come to mind. I won't elaborate deeply on that today, but spitballing, some particular instances could be that Alat is in some kind of pocket dimension containing the planet, and a sphere around the planet in the dimension is closing in and eating stars or dropping them off of the local group. Or further, perhaps, is a theory that the dimension is instability and Alat is falling out of its parent dimension, and other stars did in the distant past before it. Now the light's not getting there, whatever. Straying away from the dimension bending side, I think it's possible that Alat's suns or stars are artificial, made by the ancient race, or something of that degree, and have a fixed burnout date. The possibilities are relatively wide, but what is mostly important in that entire spitball idea, or that even another theory going along that chain has to, basically, for this to work, follow along, is that it's caused by a relatively precise, likely technological, in some form, force. One in which the ancients, before they blew up their moon, had a relatively accurate timing on when this would happen ahead of time. If that is the case, then it is very likely that Shakhsi also have access to that date and information. And if it is so, then the actions of the Master Lamb can be recontextualized a bit, as he can be assumed to be the messenger of the world of that coming disaster that the Shakhsi have that information carried from the past of. With that said, I've probably lost you a bit in this, so let's just rehash the facts so far before I explain how the events of the game tie into this. So, major fact, the Tarkan boy Alsahir is most likely related to the Master Lamb, also called Alsahir. The junior Alsahir, next fact, the junior Alsahir is confirmed to be a leader of the Shakhsi. The game literally says this when you get to Kiva. It's leader of hidden people. People who are revered for hiding in the desert and keeping ancient knowledge. Next fact, the ancient people were capable of at least destroying a moon, and also the game has thematic roots related to a game of the same developer wherein dimensional technology was notable. And another fact, the Shakhsi maintained a prophecy of a sort, wherein all people must gather in Kiva, the bunker city, which has a striking similarity to the darkness in that prophecy. The darkness, the Day of the Black Void, it's very similar, right? With that said, this leaves some room for interest in the story, as it at least partially explains the events of the story, though there's not fully, especially at the beginning. There's a bit of, it doesn't make full sense, something's kind of weird there, but as you keep going, it makes more sense, as a theory. So, a theory of the series events of the story, as this would envision, would be that, before the start of the story even, the darkness, for whatever reason it would happen, the Shakhsi came to know of, or did know, was approaching in merely weeks. Alsahir, the leader of the Shakhsi, is now in the Romani homeland. The reason is not clear. Perhaps he was there on a diplomatic mission. Perhaps it was possible the Shakhsi were seeking a way to liberate Kishtim for the people of Karat, and requesting Romani support is on their mind. Or even an extension of that, perhaps they knew the typhoons were on their way. Remember, they probably went around the sides. They probably went through territory of the hidden people without knowing they were there. And they were making a move to help the Romani push in the interest of the liberation of Kishtim. Perhaps it was them even who leaked the information about the reactor leading to the Kivian campaign. Regardless, by opportunity or design, Alsahir is present in the Romani homeland when the nukes drop. The major ones. And manages to somehow convince the Sevastopol crew to proceed to Earth. The simplest explanation is possibly, following on that last theory, that they knew that Typhons were coming, and they forewarned the Romani of that city of the attack in quiet, and managed to earn their trust enough to send them northwards without really telling them much more. But you could also say they let them in on some information or something else. There's no real confirmation on this, obviously, but this is a very open question anyways, and the only other alternative is actual religious connotations, which I'm not going to say are incorrect. This game definitely has religious connotations. Upon reaching he finds out about the situation of the command of the fleets. He shows up with Sevastopol, but you have to actually start the campaign, and it's said to be 2 days or so before he actually, approaches you, before you leave. And this is the reason for that multiple day delay, is that he probably had to figure out who was in charge here, right? So then he approaches the Duke with the pot and relays to him the information about Omar Khan's whereabouts, as well as granting him the pot with the unknown substance. Probably for the same reason he brought the Sevastopol crew along, which most likely was some reason, liberation of Kishtim, Khiva, whatever. Now, so he gives the pot and the whereabouts of Omar Khan to the Duke. As far as I have theories on the pot's contents, I personally believe it's actually most likely that the pot is symbolic. It's unlikely that Omar Khan would just outright side with the Duke with his whole fleet for something like a mere drug or beard oil, especially given the Duke has Fazil in tow, who, may I remind you, Fazil's bloodline deposed Omar Khan's bloodline from power some, decades ago, long before the 7 years ago event. To say that they have bad blood is probably light. However, the symbolism of the pot may be important. Perhaps this ointment is a rare, but not so much that one would gift it to Omar normally. However, being gifted this specific pot and oil is more of an unspoken message from Alsahir to Omar. As for the reason behind Alsahir's death, I'd mulled it many times over months and never figured it out. It doesn't make sense in this context for him to be killed. Why would the governor care about putting down a prophecy that he later wished to believe in, even? But today, as I wrote this script, funnily, all those months kind of clicked, and it made sense in a really simple way, actually. Alsahir's interactions were likely not unseen by Fazil, and in a twist of irony, history repeats itself. For those who don't know, a rare random event can be played where a Heresid actually reveals to you that Fazil is the source of spying on your fleet, which leaves you with an option to ignore or put him under guard, in which case, if you do so, gives you -4 stars, effectively banishing him, and increases the time you can stay in cities undetected, the game essentially confirming through mechanics that Fazil is actually an informant of the governor of some form. With this in mind, it makes sense that such a high-profile figure as Alsahir, going to such great lengths to assist the Duke by both sending Sevastopol with them and also giving them the means to easily request Omar's assistance, would inevitably result in Fazil reporting this information to the Gathering, in which the governor could have then ordered him an enemy where he was killed, or then possibly even ordered as an execution. Possibly they even trapped Alsahir, who had potentially thought his actions untraced and thought the governor thought nothing of him. Note that Alsahir is actually named Prophet in the game files. Not to mention his body is covered up, likely concealing any scars, which would definitely make him fit the definition in the quotas of a disfigured man, such and so. Nothing comely about him, he's not, In a real-life scripture parallel, the fact of the governor killing the quote-unquote true prophet is beautifully ironic, and very possibly an intentional reference to scripture, where the Pharisees rejected Jesus, as they believed their Messiah would be a strong ruler, not a meek spiritual savior. In this case, the governor killing the prophet Alsahir, and later believing in the false sayings of Prophet Sayadi. This also implies a possible direction the ending of the game is going at Khiva, which is that there is some people who have broken in the files a little bit, including myself, who have seen it. Supposedly there is something, a plaque to read there, as mentioned. The text is not there in the files, and it's mentioned at the end of the story. It's possible that plaque is actually the prediction of the time at the end of the days, and something on that plaque immediately says that there's no prophecy, that this was just our gift to you as the old peoples, something like that. Upon this day, do whatever in Khiva to survive, so on. And there's really not much to go off in that direction, but that kind of does seem like that would be the fitting ending to this whole thing, in my opinion. It's that, or it's the missing bit of quota, or something that ties into that. Governor killing the prophet, believing in a false one, sort of thing. I think that would also be a fitting ending, especially because then you could have, if you keep him alive, you could say something or something. But for now, we really don't know. And that's only how this theory would bring that ending of the game. I think that's like one of the interesting things about Highfleet's lore is that it doesn't want to commit to an answer, which actually leaves you a lot of questions at the end of the day. This theory, at the end of the day, it ties a lot of holes together and it tries to really go somewhere, but at the end of the day, it still leaves around the same amount of questions unanswered, which is why was Alsahir in the Romani capital? How did he know to be there? Why being of Shakhsi origin would he trust the Romani? Because the Romani backed the the Romani backs the Allow in taking away right after taking away Kishdem and turning into Kiva. So that's also an unanswered question. This series not perfect, right? But it really leaves a lot of food for thought, if you ask me. I'd love to hear others' inputs, to be honest. Because realistically speaking, honestly, half of this theory comes from other ideas. Like, the entire idea of it being Hammerfight related is like some other interesting tidbits, like the fact there's 3 reactors is kind of a reference to Hammerfight's 3 control gems, and the idea was if you collect them all, you can break out of the subplane that the Hammerfight Hellat was stuck on, or whatever the hell. There's a lot, honestly, to unpack here. But that's just a theory. A game theory.